Okay.
This is what I was waiting for. I still look at their website from the country of the Netherlands, and they basically say, don't come if you don't have to.
Come because you have to.
Barry, do we get ice cream with this presentation today?
Say again,
Did we get ice cream with this presentation today?
ice cream?
Yeah, well, we never got it last night, right?
Oh, right. That's true. That's true. That's true. Well, it's, let's see, we have, good. We're getting close. I
Okay.
just it hit the record button, so we are at least now being recorded. So input, Donna, I would love to have you give input if there's anything that you see that I am not saying correctly, because my memory doesn't always serve me as well as I'd like it to. The pictures are there, but where everything is in pretty much in order, I think so. But all I'm trying to say is give input if you have any input.
Okay, I don't know if my memory is any better than yours, but
Well, yeah, it was too good of a trip. Well, it's now officially 11 o'clock. So I'm going to officially start. Let me make this change a couple of things. Okay,
Well,
from
there's Joe. Morning, Joe.
Morning, Joe.
Good morning, guys.
good morning, Joe.
Joe.
Morning, Joe.
Let me now share screen. Okay, we're going to share screen and we're going to share. Okay. I think you can all see this now. Okay.
Yes.
So good. Okay, let me now start. This is going to be out on the Grand Canyon. Obviously, it's a 320-mile rafting trip that we did down the Colorado River. And that was in April, which is obviously a little over a month back. And a little bit of a view of what is going on here. So the Grand Canyon, for those of us who don't know where it is, that's basically the United States, and it's kind of in the western quadrant of the United States. So the Grand Canyon is actually a short section. You can see California there, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and you can also see the Colorado River coming in up at the top. And there's another river. Hang on, Sabine, you want to mute? So what you see there is Lake Powell, which is the northern part of the Grand Canyon. And what you then see is the Grand Canyon, and the tail end is Lake Mead. And those are two areas there that have dams on either end. The Lake Powell area has called the Glen Canyon Dam, and the lower part is the Hoover Dam. And in between is the Grand Canyon. From the Grand Canyon here again, you can see the Colorado River on this picture. And this is a little bit of a feel of how many Native American Indian tribes there are involved in this. So you've got all these different areas as the Colorado winds through the Grand Canyon, and all the different tribes that are involved. We would see different remnants of these. You can see it in some of the pictures, but this is to give you a feel of how the different Indians tribes, how they still are involved with the Grand Canyon. This is probably the most important picture in the next couple of days, and I'll show it a couple of more times. But this is the grandness of the Grand Canyon. So the Colorado River, if you notice, is at the very bottom left-hand corner. And you can see how small it actually is. But the Grand Canyon is a series of rock structures that over 2 billion years has formed. So at the very bottom of the Grand Canyon is what they call the Vishnu schist, which you're going to see a little later on again. And this is probably the oldest rock formation in the Grand Canyon and on Earth, and it's basically at the very bottom, and then you have layers on top of that as we go along. The Grand Canyon is one of those things that it's just hard. You're going to see some immense pictures, but it's hard to describe these rock formations. And I don't have a verbal on every one of these as we go through. But if you kind of put this time period into your brain, you will see. This picture I took off
Yeah.
the.
Gardeners are out there.
What?
Did you talk to the gardeners already?
Okay.
No, I haven't seen him.
Oh, they're out there
Mitsu,
right
if
now.
Mitsu, do me a
Okay.
favor and hit mute. Anyway, this picture I took out of the off the internet before I start my own pictures, but this is the Colorado River, and it basically shows an interesting view of how the Colorado cuts through the Grand Canyon, through all of these different layers. And it was basically rainwater eroding the sides of the canyons as time went along. So here we are in Flagstaff, and Flagstaff is the beginning of where we started our trip. And this is inside of the Oars facility. And Jim Caldwell, who's on the call, and I walked around inside here, and they showed us some of these dories, because you're going to see we ended up going down in a raft, but this is the other way you can go down the Grand Canyon in these handmade dories. So inside their warehouse, they had a series of these dories that it's a different way of seeing the Grand Canyon, I guess what I'm trying to say. Any comments, Jim?
I was just going to add that you will hear the name Martin Litton, and Martin Litton died in 14, but his last trip that he rode a dory down the Colorado, he was 84 years old. And if you go to YouTube video and put in Martin's boat, you will see what the company Oars did as a tribute to him. They built, if you back up one more image, Barry, that is the boat that they named in his honor. And we'll get down, I think it's in the third or fourth day, we talk a little bit more about Martin Litton, who is absolutely the savior of the Grand Canyon, because Marble Canyon is one section, and the Bureau of Reclamation had proposed another dam between the two two dams that Barry has mentioned, and he fought like hell with the help of the Sierra Club and a number of other organizations to stop the construction of the Marble Canyon Dam. That's the significance of Marble Canyon and Martin Litton.
Excellent, Jim. Thank you. So this is, like, as I said, this is another way to go down the river. We went down the river in a raft, and what we ended up having, this is what the configuration of the raft would look like. You saw the two areas in the front where the passenger seating was. They show three, but we had two in the front. The guide sat in the middle, he would row, and then we had two people in the back. So there were four people plus the guide. So this was our mode of transportation for the 18 days. So our first day, we had to take our luggage because we were all overpacked. And so they gave us these yellow bags you can see inside of this trailer. And so we each got one bag for our sleeping stuff. So our air mattress, our sleeping bag and pillow and whatever. And the other bag is the only amount of baggage that you could bring. So this was what they call check baggage. It was a waterproof bag that you got to put your stuff into. But beyond that, that's all you could take for 18 days.
For your entire 18-day trip.
All right. So as we go here, we've now left Flagstaff, and this is the entry point at the Grand Canyon. This is called Lee's Ferry. It is just below the Glen Canyon Dam. And John Lee, who it's named after, was an interesting character who had 19 wives and 56 children. Anyway, he ended up being executed because he was involved in a massacre of. It's a long story. I'm not going to get into it if you have any interest. But this is the entry point into the Grand Canyon here. So our first day, we're starting to pack up, and here are our guides. And if you notice the gentleman on the right-hand side with his rabbit ears on, he is our preeminent leader. His name is Corey. And the other guys there are his support. The first day we were on Corey's boat, and you can see the yellow bag sitting in the front, and those are our bags that we were able to put aboard the boat.
And Barry, this is probably a pretty good time to go back one and put out the revelation that Saturday, this is Sunday morning. This is Easter Sunday morning. And Saturday night, Corey, our trip leader, was addressing all 16 of the guests, and a hotel person that we were at their meeting room came in and asked who Corey was, and he identified himself. And I had already arranged with the hotel manager to present to Corey to set the tone of the trip a little bit, because there are a lot of things that you will see Barry participating in down the river that I won't spoil for you. But there are a lot of antics, and I knew that ahead of time. So the hotel manager presented Corey with an Easter basket that had candy and squirt guns in it and a set of rabbit ears. And nobody knows until right now that I was the one that
You.
set that all up for Corey. And he was an absolute great sport. And you'll see in a number of pictures, he took it and ran with the whole concept, because you will see him with these every picture in the first 5 days. And then at the end of the trip, he also had them on. So that's just a little inside information. Today's Revelation Day, and nobody even knows that yet.
Thank you, Jim.
You're the first.
Thank you. So we now have left, there is a buoy marker in the middle, or a channel marker in the middle of the Colorado, because this is, when you pass here, you're now entering the Colorado, and there's no way off the Colorado until you get out to the other end. You can walk out or be helicoptered out, but this is the beginning of it. So just to show you overall, the water of the Colorado, normally what you see is this dirt and mud pile. But we were very fortunate in the early part of the season in April, where the water is basically crystal clear. So we don't have this dirty mud pile going down. So as we're starting to go down the Colorado, you're going to see some scenery that is just spectacular. One quick comment here is that the water flow on the Colorado, when we were there, was between 8 and 10,000 cubic feet a second. So that's the flow, and that's regulated by the Glen Canyon Dam. Normally, without the dams, there used to be a flow of in excess of 100,000 cubic feet a second flow when the Colorado would flow. So it's major changes since they put the dams in. So here we start to go down the scenery. I mean, it starts out, your brain starts to understand the immenseness of it when you're sitting at the bottom of these canyons, and you can see the sun starting to come up. It's beyond anything that you can put your brain around until you've actually been there and seen it. And before
One of the questions that everybody might have is, how cold was the water?
There you
And the
go.
water is coming out of the bottom of the dam. And the water temperature doesn't vary much between summer and winter. And it's averaging somewhere between 48 to 52 degrees year round.
So here we are starting to do our flowing. So everybody thinks the Colorado River is absolutely wild. It is, but there's a lot of very nice smooth areas where you just get to lay back and watch the scenery go by because it's just unbelievable. You have here at the beginning, which I had no idea of a plant called a tamarisk, which was introduced in the 19th century as an erosion control plant. And this is this plant at the bottom that you can see these little trees. But they're now trying to take that out of the Grand Canyon because it's negatively affecting the native vegetation and the wildlife. But you're going to see more of this, but it's called tamarisk. Animals along the way that we saw, I mean, here's a bighorn sheep. That was on a regular basis. You'd see the bighorns. There'd also be mule deer, fox, coyotes. As we go down the canyon, you start to see the beginning of some of the smaller rapids. These are, again, the Colorado is the only one in the United States, the only river that is rated in 1 to 10. Most rivers are 1 to 6 because the Colorado has 2 class 10 rapids. These are relatively small yet. It's just a
Called
little bit.
House Rock.
Say again, Jim?
House Rock.
Oh, thank you. I forgot. Thank you.
And can I use your phone? My phone is.
I mean, the immenseness of it is just, I mean, it keeps going. It is so beautiful. There's our group backwards. There were, like I said, 4 boats and 2 support boats. And there are 4 people per boat. And then you had the 2 support boats, which were each rowed by 1 extra person. I can't tell you about each one of these layers because I'm not a geology major, but
I'll just call and see.
Well, let me see the number.
it's so spectacular.
It's a Joe and that's the number. Just push the number and see. if
Hey,
it's
Mitsu, can you, Mitsu?
their number?
There we go. So these rocks are, I mean, you're going to see just changes. It's hard to tell you how beautiful. The Colorado just flows by this. This is one of our first evenings. We're starting to pull over. You can see our group leader with his ears on, so easy to identify. There's Mark, who is unloading our yellow bags, which are our personal bags off the boat. This being our first camping spot on the first evening, I mean, it's hard, again, to be able to say we camped here is beyond anything to understand because it's just the most magnificent picture that you've ever seen with this pristine, beautiful campground. And it's there's no pollution, there's no dirt, there's no, all you have is clean sand. But you can see Corey, which is the leader, starting to set up the blue bag, which is the bag which has our sleeping gear in it, and the yellow bag, which is our personal gear. And people are starting to set up their bags. This is
And all of that sand you'll hear about it later in the trip, but it was sand, but it was so fine it got nicknamed Grit.
Well, that was Donna's name. There was another name for that.
Yeah, a little bit more than grit, but we won't go there.
Okay, but anyway, this is the view we had having dinner in the evening. I mean, if you can imagine this, I mean, it was just a spectacular view. There's the sun going down. Here's the Motley, 3 of the Motley crews, and our first night, not realizing this sand, which actually is very fine sand, becomes abrasive to everything. But you can see it a little bit in the background, the yellow bag sitting around, because everybody's trying to stake out their place for the evening, because the 4 of us did not go into a tent. We stayed outside. So for the 18 days, each of us would spend the evening outside all night. Being at the bottom of the canyon, it was very dry. This picture is how we would have dinner in the evening. Our crew, there's Jackson on the left in green, and Phil. They were a couple of the very good guides. This was the kitchen area. They would make dinner on the left. They were preparing dinner, as you can see right now. And the foreground, you can see those 3 buckets. What those were is to be able to do your dishes in the evening. So the first one was a hot water rinse with soap. The second one was a rinse, and then the third was final rinse. And when you finished, you would take the dishes back to the piece underneath where Phil and Jackson are standing, that container, just slip it in there and let it air dry, because the evening it was just, it's so dry there. You can also see in the background one of the blue areas, the blue mats, and that was somebody's sleeping area for the evening. This I threw in here just to show you what our sleeping attire was. You would put down the blue tarp, then you would blow up this sleeping bag, and then you would plug in, if you can see in front of my nose there is a phone or and also a charging device where you would charge things up, because there's no electricity along the way. And what became very important for our trip was a brush. You can see that brush there, because that sand, you can see just on the blue there, got into absolutely everything after a while. And keeping it at a distance was very critical.
And Barry, back up one. I just need to finish off something here. This is your area that you put your, as Barry said, this is his air mattress, not his sleeping bag. We were instructed not to put our sleeping bags out until we were ready to get into them, because you do have some creepy crawlers over the years that have found their way into someone's sleeping bag, including red ants that we learned go to sleep and back down into their holes at dusk. So you don't want to get your bag exposed to some of these creepy crawlers. And in the blue bag that you see there is called the sleep kit, which is the sleeping bag and all the stuff that you needed. And then the yellow is what Barry referred to earlier as your personal dry bag. Sorry.
That's okay. I appreciate it. So day 2, we wake up in the morning, and this is what we have to wake up to. So we continue on. So an average day would be anywhere from 15 to 20 miles. So again, scenery that is just spectacular, seeing it from lower part. So one of the very important things of this trip turned out to be what are called side trips. So almost every day we would do a hiking trip. Here you can see the group starting to walk up one of these side canyons they would take us on. There you can see Kevin and Mark and Jim as we're starting to hike up. Jim being very conscious of his skin, because he's definitely a white man, and he wants to make sure that he wants to not have more skin cancer. But I mean, you can see the rock formations that we're walking across. Here's the group taking a little bit of a short snooze between the hike as we're going up. But you can see these rock formations. I mean, obviously water is what has cut all of this out. But there's no more water, obviously, right now. Everyone at most of these side canyons, they all had water coming down them from springs or from aquifers.
You just love camping.
So being our second day, we're not really into swimming yet or going into this water, but it was usable water if you wanted to do a little bit of a dip. So after that little side trip, back on the raft and going down the river again. Here you have Jim again, all bundled up, which his wife would appreciate. because he's making sure that the sun does not touch any part of his skin. Again, scenery, this is the rock formations, you know, it's millions of years laid on top of each other. So again, we pulled over, one of our pullover places here, one of our guys who was with us, his name was Matt. You'll see a bunch of his pictures, but Matt was a very prolific fisherman. So every time we stopped, first thing he would do is get a pole out and throw it into the river.
And he was a very successful fisherman. He
Very-
fished almost every day and generally caught at least 2 trout every day.
Yeah.
And it was all catch and release. So he was out there just for the sport of it and loved it.
Hey, Barry, can I add something?
Yep.
So for the folks that have been to the Grand Canyon, you've been on the rims, either the north or south rim at the national park. You really don't even see any of this. When you're looking down from the rim, you just see a little dark line that runs through the bottom of the canyon. And this is the remaining 2,000 feet down that you go to the river. So when you're seeing we're not even seeing most of the canyon up above. We're just down in that river valley, so to speak.
Yep, you're absolutely correct, Mark. Here's one of our daily events, and don't show it on every day, but in the morning time before we would set off, Corey would jump onto one of his rafts as the group leader, and he would read a poem. And these poems were very interesting poems. They all were guide poems, either somebody in the past who has done this on a regular basis like him, but very inspirational. But it became a morning reading before anybody would start out. You can see the rafts are all ready to go. You can see Zane in the background, the guy with the blue cap on, and then Matt and all the different people. But anyway, Corey, it was a great event each day. So here we are again going down. There's Mark and I in the front. Jim must have taken this.
That is right, Mark.
The gentleman in the front here is one of our guides. His name is Eric. He was an excellent guide. And then you have Kevin and Jim in the background. So again, we
an idea on how much this runs in the family with these guides. Eric's grandmother was married in the Grand Canyon, in one of these side canyons that we went up to. So, you know, it's sort of passed down from generation to generation.
And one of the other things I didn't point out, Corey, who is the trip leader, he said to me, he said, this was his 59th trip down the Colorado. He did his first one, I think it was age 11, he said. So, you know, it's in his blood. So here again, you have Matt, who we pulled over, and the first thing he wants to do is get his fishing pole out and go catch a couple of trout. So it's just he absolutely just loved fishing. So here we pulled over, and this wasn't for an evening spot. This was just a pullover place because they wanted to show us some of the artifacts you're going to see. So we pulled over. And they would stake the rafts into the sand. So you had these metal stakes you drive in and attach them. So we would walk along the shore because this area here, they had an area where you could see past settlements of what Indian tribe or what they were, I don't know. But it was just a very interesting area that you can see where people could have lived very easily. They had fresh water, they had something to possibly eat, but these were remnants at the bottom of the canyon.
Most of the Indians back then were the Anasazis.
Oh, thank you. Right. And now, Mark, I remember the other thing Ryan would tell us, don't call them Anasazis because Anasazi has some kind of a negative meaning. They're now called the Puebloan people or Puebloan people. I don't remember the term, but so one of the things that we saw there at that
Anasazi meant ancient enemies.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Zane. Nice to see you. Okay, what we have here at this site was there are 2 types of rock art. One is called a pictograph and one is called a petroglyph. And this is a petroglyph because petroglyphs are etchings where they actually dig into the stone. And so the ancient Anasazi or Puebloan people, you can see here that this is some of the markings that they left behind. And you'll see some later on, also some pictographs. Again, I took this picture. I think it was one of mine. I'm not quite sure, but you can see in the top there how, I mean, it's beyond my understanding how the rock stands on top of each other. It looks like almost a man standing on top of the hill, but it's the rock formations. So as we're going along the river, you start to see these holes, and what they were is mostly springs, water springs that over the eons of time have just etched out a hole. Or at the different times, one of the things that they also mentioned to us is that this was when the river was very high at 100,000 cubic feet a second. This would be dug out also. So it's a combination, I think, thereof. But you can see how beautiful. I mean, there's water just spurting outside of the canyon walls there. These rapids, I mean, they're on a regular basis. You're going down it, not in a big form, but small. But they're all exciting. I mean, it's all fun. Okay, we now are coming to a place called Stanton's Cave. This is a natural cave on the Colorado, and it's so large that you're going to see some pictures in a second. But it was named after a man by the name of Robert Stanton, who was told by the railroads at the time in 1889 to find a place to be able to run the railroads through. And anyway, obviously not down the Grand Canyon, but it was named after him. It's called Stanton's Cave. So this,
and they also call it, they've nicknamed it to where it's Red Wall Cavern.
Oh, is it? Okay. So here's Stanton's Cave. There was another tour company that you can see some younger people on the left-hand side there that were playing football and playing games. So here we are at the back. There's Kevin, Mark, and myself, and this is looking from the inside of Stanton's cave out. You can see how unbelievably magnificent this was. Just as a side note, this cave, and so everything that you've seen so far would have all been underwater if they were able to make Marble Canyon, because Lytton, who Jim was talking about before, was the man basically that stopped Marble Canyon Dam being built, because everything that you've seen so far would now be underwater. If Marble Canyon had been built, the Marble Canyon Dam. It's just absolutely magnificent. So we continued on from Marble Canyon or from Stanton's Cave and continued down the river. And we're only basically in day 3, and it's hard. I mean, the scenery is just beyond anything that you can imagine. Again, these holes were a combination of most likely just springs and high water.
And the canyon walls averaged between 2,000 to 3,000 feet.
Yep. It's hard to give that perspective on these pictures. So again, we did a little side trip on this day. In this side trip, you can see the group, Corey with his rabbit ears on, and it looks like Patty and Jamie, and anyway, walking along this canyon because we're going up a side canyon. And there's Corey with his, he absolutely is probably the best guide that you could ever have on this trip. most knowledgeable. He's the gentleman who's been up and down this river 59 times. So he knows everything backwards and forwards.
And like he lives up in Montana, isn't that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think
And
so.
it's funny, most of the guides weren't from this area. They all came from around the country.
Well, the interesting thing is that they do also, these guides, is that they work in the construction industry in the wintertime, and they probably could make more money in the summertime, but this is a love affair with the river. It's absolutely, they just love it. So on this side trip, you can see how steep the walls get. And if you look at the bottom of it, you can see that there's water in it. So the water generally, if you follow far enough, there's Mark and Corey and Jamie in the background sitting there contemplating our good luck being here. There's Mr. Caldwell. He's traversing, he's making sure that he doesn't fall. As again, just hiking up this canyon, you can see the water, all the plant life. You know, it's just surprising how much plant life there is, green plant life, how much water. This is a plant, I don't know the name. It's probably the most nauseating plant I've ever had in my life. Every time you touch it with your shoe, it would stick to your shoe. It would come off, and you would try to get her off later on, and all it would do is disintegrate. It was, I don't know what the name is, but I took a picture of it.
Vern? Vern?
Yeah.
I saw in that picture, Corey was wearing flip-flops while he was hiking. Is that true?
You know, yes. So you have to look at, so Jim's wearing his Keen boots. Everyone's got hiking boots on, except Kevin here. He's got a pair of tennis shoes on. But yes, so he has flip-flops. It's unbelievable. I mean, every day on these side trips, he'd be flip-flopping around, and most of the guys would. And if any of us would wear flip-flops, we'd be in the hospital right now, still trying to recuperate.
We sort of came up with a little saying that if the guides are barefoot, we're going to wear flip-flops. If they're wearing flip-flops, we're going to wear hiking boots. And if they're wearing hiking boots, we ain't going.
Exactly. Exactly. If you wanted to find out what the hike was, look at what the guides were putting on their feet. And it's like, uh-oh.
Exactly. So at the end of this, here is the beauty of one of these side trips. It's beyond anything that you can imagine is there. But at the end of these canyons is this little bit of waterfall. Water is coming out of the side of the mountain that for eons of time has just been running, and this plant life that survives.
You know, we're calling these things hikes. Oftentimes they weren't so much hikes as they were scrambles. I mean, hands, legs, I mean, everything trying to get up these walls.
So here is our compadre who is obviously down for the evening, and Kevin is trying to make notations because he has been told, or no, excuse me, Jim was told to make notations, and he journaled, and so Kevin also journaled, and so each day we would make notations. But you can see our typical evening attire. This is what you do, how you end up going to bed with. So here is Jim journaling to make sure that every day is written. But you can see that in the background, there's Mark's green bivvy, and the yellow bags was our personal stuff that we only had access to once during the day. So here we are into day 4. Again, Corey doing his morning poetry reading, which was it's hard to imagine how beautiful that was every morning. Here's Jackson, one of the guides in rowing. We're now coming up to an area called Vassey's Paradise, which is springs being ejected out of these walls. You can see some pretty amazing pictures. This was originally it was named after a gentleman by the name of George Vesey, and he was a botanist that went with John Wesley Powell in 1869 down the Colorado. And John Wesley Powell was, and it's a very famous name. I won't get into the history of it, but this is called Vesey's Cathedral. Again, a bighorn sheep. So as we continue on, the beauty is just continues. So we pulled over here and we're going to do a hike. You have Matt here, our fisherman, Ryan, Phil, and have driven their spikes in to hold the boats in place. So again, as Donna just said, we're scrambling. We're now going to go from the Colorado River again up another canyon, a side canyon. And so we're starting to scramble up this side of this canyon. And you can look back and I mean, you can see we're very fortunate to have the Colorado as clear as it was, because you can see the sandbanks and the water. There's the group, you can see Zane there. Jamie smelling the flowers as we go, which is very important that we do. So as we climb up this side canyon, it starts to flatten up, but you can see at one time there had to have been a lot of water come down this canyon because of, it looks like the bottom of a riverbed, but it eventually narrows relatively tightly. And what you end up with is a small amount of water that is just eating away the rocks. So as we come back, we're heading back for the afternoon. So we're hiking back down, and the colors, and some of these I have to give credit to both Matt and Casey, because this picture was one of the unbelievable pictures. Matt ended up having some very, very good camera gear, and his colors are far better than any of the colors that I've seen in a lot of pictures. So let me go back a little bit. We ended up stopping here and we spent the afternoon, and then late evening, we ended up with another hike out of here. And what we were doing was going up to what's called the Nankoweap Granary. And you're going to see this in a second. What the granary is, it was built by the Anasazi or the Puebloans 900 years ago, and it was built to store grain. So we're now hiking up to this, what was called the granary. And this, what it was the side of the hill. These people had built these little enclosures where they would store food away from the rodents and from the other Indian tribes that happened to be passing by, so they wouldn't steal their food. Here's a view that is one of the most pristine, unbelievable views that we're able to see from the granary looking down. And if you look down at the bottom there, you can see our boats, the yellow boat, how small they are, where we've pulled over. That's the Colorado, obviously, that everyone loves, but this was a scenery that was just, there's no words for it. So at the granary here, we were able to hike obviously all the way up to it, get right up to it, look inside if you wanted to. But here is Ryan, our resident historian, who gave a lot of good depth into the different Indian people who lived at the time, lived there, because he was very knowledgeable in this area.
And if you will remember this picture, you're going to get a different perspective in about 3 weeks of this stretch of the canyon, because a couple pictures down, you're going to see what they call Desert View, which is a tower up on the south rim. And we have a picture from the south rim at the tower looking back up this river canyon. So remember that view, and you'll see it again in a few weeks.
Anyway, this is just one of these unbelievable places that is still on this earth, that is still original.
And Donna and I did not do that hike. that hike was not just on the side, just a little bit up. That was, I think, about a 400-foot cliff trail that they were going up. And
it was precarious. There's no question. But some things I always find that if I don't do them, I'm not coming back. So it's just kill myself if I have to do it. But anyway, so here we have Ryan explaining to all of us what was going on at the time. So you could see that how magnificent this is. This is Casey. He is the gentleman probably responsible for most of the pictures. And Jim took about 1,700 pictures. I think Casey took 4,000 or 3,000 or 4,000. I mean, there's so many pictures to go through. But this is one of the better pictures of him into that valley. So
and if you look at that picture, Barry, this is where we camped that night.
Yep.
And this is where the infamous grit came from. But you see our boats, but you can see the trails down there. That's where we were taking up that whole point there with campsites.
It's hard.
Some better than others.
I'm hoping you can see most of that. You can see the little yellow boats in the bottom of the picture. I mean, anyways, it's a special spot. So from the granary, when you look straight across, that's what you look at straight across. So that's just a view from the granary across. So where you look down and saw our boats, here we are. You can see the guides. We've come in. They're now scrambling because they're going to set up the kitchen because they've got to have our hors d'oeuvres ready and they've got to have our dinner ready. And I mean, they're amazing people, what they do. It's so well orchestrated. Just as a real side thing there, you can see the red bucket and the green bucket. So every day when you would eat, you would have to wash your hands. So you first put soap on your hands and then you had a little pump, a foot pump that you pumped water. So you'd have to wash your hands. But that was our hand washing station.
And the food on the trip was incredible.
Wasn't it, Donna? It's just
Yep.
first.
We ate really well.
So here we have our typical evening, the quad, the four people, which is obviously Kevin, Mark, Jim, and I, and we would stake our ground, and we'd find our four rocks to hold our tarps down, and we'd set up our evening attire. You can see Jim's gear on the bushes. That was his first reaction, is to get his stuff off and get it dry. So here we are in the evening time. This is a normal kind of an evening that they always had chairs for us. And after dinner, we'd sit around. And here was an evening. We played a game they taught us called Mexican Viejo, which is, anyway, it's a long story. We're not going to get into it, but it was a great gambling game on that 50 caliber ammunition box that you saw with the lights around it. So day 5. Again, morning ritual is loading the boats. Everyone brings their stuff down after they've unpacked all their stuff away, and the guides are starting to pack up all the equipment again. So here is the motley crew. The four of us were all fully geared up with all of our splash gear, because the guides, you can see they only have t-shirts on, but the paying customers, they got to be all clothed to make sure that no water hits their skin. But anyway, so here we are back again, going down the river. Just a typical beautiful day on the Colorado. Mark out zenning out, just enjoying himself.
There's another nice one.
There's some of the larger rapids. The problem with the large rapids, let's say the class 9, class 10 rapids, they don't want you taking pictures when you're going through them, because when it's class 4, class 5, you can kind of take pictures and videos and that, but if they're big stuff, you don't want to get bounced out. So this is a good picture, a little bit of a feel of the water as it starts to drop, because many of these drops are anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6 feet drops
or more.
or more. Thank you, Donna.
Yeah, for the really big ones, the yellow helmets that you saw in the front, we had to put those on for the really big ones. And generally too, they'd stop the boats and scout the rapids before we actually took it on. So
Well, you need to mention that Corey would put on his tutu. So when the tutu was on, we knew we were in for some serious whitewater.
yeah,
Now, here's one of the more interesting places along the Colorado. This is called the Little Colorado River. Now, it comes into the main one. So they're on the right side is the main Colorado River. And we're now going to go up, not with the rapids, with the rafts. We're going to go up the Little Colorado River. And as a side, I'm going to explain something real quick. Right here, from here, there was a proposal that they make a gondola ride from the top of the Grand Canyon down to the spot right here, right? So from the drop of the Grand Canyon here, there was a proposal a few years back that they allow 10,000 people a day to ride a gondola down to see the Grand Canyon. Well, you know, you could see a little bit the Little Colorado River, which I'm going to go up in about 2 minutes, but you can see the main Colorado River going across right at that point right here. This would have been ruined by a restaurant, right? I mean, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that these people even think this way, but luckily that there was enough of the local tribes that put a stop to it. But anyway, they weren't able to stop it. But this is the proposal. One of the things that ended up killing it was, where do they get the water to drink from? And where does the black water or your pee and poop go to? Because it's like, here's in a desert, right? 10,000 people a day going up and down this. I get that they're going to make money anyway. It was a side thing. So here we arrived at this intersection where they were going to put a restaurant in. And this is the way God made it, or whoever, or Buddha made it. But this is the original corner. So you can see the Colorado River, how beautiful it is. And you can see the Little Colorado coming in. So we all stopped. They stopped here. We drove the stakes in the ground, secured the boats. Then we now start hiking up the Little Colorado River. And it's hard to imagine, and I don't fully understand this, of how the color, maybe somebody can explain to how the minerals, or what mineral turns the water blue. But this river is blue.
it's calcium carbonate. You'll see the same thing in Iceland. The Blue Lagoon has that same color to it. And just to kind of add to what Barry was saying, this proposal was originally on Navajo land, and it was the Navajo Tribal Council that voted it out. So
yeah, thank you, Donna. Yeah, I mean, here this river goes way up. I don't remember how many miles, but I understand up near the top end of it there are some springs where is sacred land that we're, as white people, aren't allowed to go, but sacred land where this water comes out of the ground blue, and it's always been. I think it's the Hopis, isn't it, Donna?
there were several tribes that consider this a sacred area. In fact, the mythology or the tribal legend is that this is where the people actually emerged from the underground. So it's a sacred place to several tribes in the area.
Thank you. So as we're hiking up this river, we happened to see, or they showed us, this was obviously not that old, but I understand in the 30s or 40s, some white guy decided to build some place to hang out. I don't really didn't fully understand it, but so this is right on the Little Colorado River. So it's still there, but you can see he's got a frame of a door and a window. Do you remember more information, Donna, on that one?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as you go up the Little Colorado River, you can see it's just a beautiful little river. One of our guides there, John, he's always had that colorful umbrella, so you could always point him out. So one of the things that we ended up doing a ways up on the little Colorado, it was a warm day, so we all jumped into the water and we were able to, you can see there's Kevin, it looks like, and Mark and myself going down this little river. There's again the motley crew, not the best picture of us, but but on one of the runs, what I'm trying to show here is that I banged my arm, but it was blood. It was worthy to give.
But it's important to show the life rafts, Barry. Explain the life jackets. We put them on as diapers instead of life jackets.
Go ahead.
Just if you can see, well, not all the way behind Barry's knees, the life jackets had a flap that was like a pillow. If you went overboard, it was to help your head stay above water. So they just told us to invert them, step into them, and it'll also protect your butt going down the little Colorado.
But Christy, if you note, you've got 3 bare-chested men, but your husband was well covered all the time.
I know I cannot believe it.
So here, this is just as something interesting, another one of these hoodwink ideas. And this one is maybe going to happen, or I'm not quite sure. But to the left on the picture, you can see the Colorado River. Then you can see the little Colorado coming in that we just followed up. The proposal is to put 2 dams in, right?
Yeah.
So it's another one of these, somebody trying to make some money. I don't fully understand the whole idea, of it, but it's just insane again, trying to put 2 more dams on this little itty bitty river.
There's multiple threats to the Grand Canyon and to the river.
Right, it is ongoing. That's the weird part. So here we are going down the canyon again. We're back on the river. So back into the canyon, into the beauty. Here we come across what are called salt mines. And so the Hopi Indians, this was their way of accessing salt. So preserving their food, which was if they would if they'd kill a sheep or whatever it happened to be to preserve the meat, these walls would seep seep salt. We weren't allowed to touch it, obviously, but it was salt that they would use to preserve their food. This was an evening camping area. You're going to start to see where we pull over again, another quad. This was our group camping area again. You can see there's a bunch of bachelors with their stuff hanging on the trees everywhere to keep it dry, because we didn't have our women to keep everything neat and tidy. So but this would be a normal just a camping area.
Why don't you tell about the blue buckets?
Go ahead, Mark.
So everybody got a pee bucket when they went to bed, because there was no allowing you to pee on the ground. And it really made all the campsites very, very clean as a result of that.
So yes, exactly. So in the evening time, the older gentlemen do need to pee more than once. And so instead of it pitch black at night, stumbling down to the edge of the river, and maybe getting lost into the river, this was their way of. So in the morning time, first ritual was to go take a pee, go down to the river, and whether you're male or female, and do your thing, right, Donna?
Yep. We use with the 3 women on the trip, we use the bucket too. So
yeah. So here we have an evening, a normal. I showed this before, but just to show it again, it was a way to wash the dishes. This is our dishwashing system. The evening sitting around. There's Donna. So day 6.
Everybody would just volunteer to wash dishes. It wasn't an organized situation. Everybody just was always, very, very cool about usually 2 or 3 people there washing dishes.
Yep.
and just rotating it around.
So day 6, again, there's Donna in all of her splendor, first thing in the morning.
Bags.
No, you're great. So anyway, here we have all of our luggage being set up in the morning time, so ready to go onto the boat. So we're going to see a little bit of a difference now. I took this picture because they showed this to us. There's a fault line across here, and you're going to see the difference between a Grand Canyon that is more or less vertical on either side to an open area all of a sudden. And this is a very, it's if I was a geologist, I could explain it, but it's called the Palisades Fault. So what ends up happening here at the Palisades Fault is the Grand Canyon opens up.
Mhm.
And here is Ryan explaining the different why it's level, what the original Indians used to grow here and how they lived. But you can see the topography has totally changed all of a sudden. So we ended up pulling over here again, and this was one of these side trips that, again, like every side trip we took was just fascinating. But this is how we'd also have lunch. So they would set this table up, and then they would have sandwiches, and we'd have, I mean, how they preserved, I don't know, 7 to 10 days. Every day we had avocados. I can't get avocados to last more than 4 or 5 days. And how they would do it for 7 to 10 days is I've never understood it. But it was always great lunches. So just as a reference point, we're now going to climb up to the top of the left-hand mountain to the top. So there's the view from our lunch table across what we had to look at. So obviously Pringles was part of our daily intake. So we climbed to the top of this mountain. There's the Colorado in the background and the Grand Canyon all around us, but it has opened up quite a bit. So as we hiked up there, even looking back at our boats, the group, as we're walking up the top of this mountain, there's Jim fully covered again. More covered than all of us were. The beauty is just, I mean, it's so spectacular. But I think, Jim, you wanted to say something here about the view. You're muted, Jim. You're muted.
The Uncar. This is we're up above the Uncar Rapids, and 3 weeks from now we're going to do another presentation of circumnavigation by car around the Grand Canyon, both the North Rim, South Rim, and the 2 dams on each side. But this is the Uncar area, and from the North Rim, we were able to see the Uncar and the canyons around, which is a whole different perspective. And then the South Rim, we also could see Uncar pretty well from the South Rim. So you'll get to see that. If you remember this area, what Barry's talking about, it's Uncar, and there's the Uncar Rapids where it's a set of 4 rapids, but you also will be able to see it from both rims of the canyon. And these are some of the ruins on the, go ahead, Barry.
No, it's fine. You're fine, Jim. You're fine, go ahead.
Oh, these are just the ruins. We hiked to 2 prominent points. The first one that we hiked to was the overlook of the Uncar Rapids, and you'll see that we're taking pictures straight down the wall side, and you'll also see some pictures of the little bit higher point where those ruins were. But where I'm sitting now, you're going to be able to see this all over. It's a one spot that we were able to see from both the north and south rims of the Grand Canyon very well.
What was so interesting is that the people would live here, right? I mean, you could see why, because they had the delta, all of the area where they could actually farm, because you could see the river down there, all the fertile land. But why they lived up there, if I understood what I was told at least, was that it was a viewpoint to be able to see if there was another tribe or another marauding group coming to steal anything from them. So it was a viewpoint that they could
And
look down upon.
the delta that you will see is on the opposite side of the river. That's pretty much a flat plateau area out there. And that's where a lot of the farming was done, and also some over my shoulder.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a view of the group as we're all at the top. Another great shot of Casey. There's the group, the quad, as we called ourselves. Now, this is the Uncar Rapids below us. You're going to see a few minutes we'll be down into those rapids. They don't look very huge, and they weren't huge, but they were still significant. So looking in the background now, this vertical mountain, that's where we shot the pictures, was on top of that hill. We're now down into the Uncar Rapids. So one evening after 5 days of guys sitting around drinking and telling stories, Corey decides that he's going to pull out some toenail polish. And so all of us started to have our toenails done. I was unfortunately or fortunately the first, and then it became a cascading event.
Hello?
So,
And I want you ladies to know that there was a conversation about manis and pedis and how long they lasted and how often you had to have them done and how fast your nails grow. It killed me.
So here, it took a little bit of this for Jim to get his toes painted, but he brought these along, a little cinnamon whiskey. So here are our toes. The left one is the rose color is Jim's. Kevin is the blue with the red, and mine is the green, and Mark has the silver and purple. So this is the quad toe. So we had a very good time. We only had one member, and I won't mention who it was, who didn't get his toes painted unless the member wants to say something. But
well, I got 2 toes painted when I was sleeping, so.
So one member decided not to get his toes painted, but 2 days later, Corey found Zane sleeping and painted 2 of his toes.
And Donna, just so you know, we all learned that it was weeks before this stuff wore off. I finally had to get out nail polish remover.
I know, Matt and Jeff, the same thing. It was like, wait, how come yours lasts so long and mine doesn't? So.
Oh, I didn't know they had a remover. I used sandpaper to get mine off. But you should mention, Barry, that this led to my attack. The attack of my toes led to a song.
Great song.
A great song. A very good song. Do you want to sing it, Zane?
No, I don't sing.
Anyway, he wrote a song, which was great. So anyway, we'll play that another day. So this is one of our last evenings on the 6th day. Everyone's sitting around just having a little toast. Here is the one old man helping another old man into their clothing or out of their clothing so we don't fall out, because the 3 of us are all within a couple of months of each other. We're all 73 years old. So helping each other into our clothing is a good and necessary thing. So
that's before we wised up and figured out that we can do it in a chair. Just bring one of the chairs from the campsite.
Yep. So anyway, that basically is the end of the first 7 days. And so I'm gonna, if you want to hang around, I'm gonna show a couple of videos. Anyway. So let me get this, hang on. Okay, let me put this off, off. Okay, couple of videos. Let's see, we do. Okay. Hang on any second now. I just have, takes me a second to set this up. Minimize, share screen.
I'm going to show some videos.
Okay, here is, let me get this audio, mute the audio track, disable, and video full screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. This is at the top of the Ankar River. And so this is a video kind of showing you what the topography looks like around. And this was the rapids we just went through.
And this is a 360-degree view that I took, just trying to show the different landscape around there. And you'll see that the video finishes back with a shot of Mark that we started with. And it's about a 2-minute video.
It's just, I mean, the expansiveness of the Grand Canyon. This is what you don't see from the top. These open areas where, you know, it's just amazing. It would be much easier for people to live in these open areas with agriculture and water and animals than it is in the steep canyons. Here's Kevin trying to take a picture, and there's Matt in the background walking up.
Matt is Donna's son.
Thank you.
That was on the trip, and there with her husband. So they were a threesome, we were a foursome, and then Casey was a twosome. And I think everybody else was pretty much single party members.
Yeah.
But we all bonded very quickly and very well.
Okay.
So there's Mark. That's the end of that video.
Yep.
You could just stop that one video.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
That's Crater Lake in California.
This is a little bit of just a video of obviously one of the rapids. These are manageable rapids where Jim was able to take videos, but the bigger ones, you just couldn't do it.
But I'm trying to point out, or on the right-hand side, we're going by some rocks that they called holes that you just didn't want to be too far to the right into on some of these holes.
Yeah, you'll see it in a second. Yeah. Yeah, you can see one there.
Coming up right there. You don't want to be in those.
Right.
The good news is all the 54 named rapids, we did not have anybody go overboard and didn't have any flips of the rafts. Very, very great trip.
And sometimes there were rapids that you could actually bow ride. So that front of the raft that you see, you could actually, the guides would tell us, okay, you can ride this one. Somebody on the boat would sit there and you'd straddle it like a cowboy and ride right up front.
It looks so calm starting, and then it just gets real ugly real fast.
We're going right through this one.
So what number is this one? How big a rapid?
They never called it, Gene. They never
Okay.
said what they were. It's the
It was
rapid. The
a
funny,
minor one.
yeah. Well, a 4 or 5 maybe.
Uh-huh.
In a scale of 10, the only ones that really counted were the big ones, the 9s and 10s. When they said you had to wear a helmet, those are the ones you took notice of. This kind of stuff here is like, it's enjoyable. You get wet, it's fun and all of that, but it's not life threatening. It's when you have a 6 or 7 foot hole that the boat's going into and then it comes out of, and those are the ones where yeah. And those are the ones you can't take movies of because you're hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
There are even a couple of rapids where the guides told us you can swim this one if you want to. So you jump in the water and you go through the rapids without a boat.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. There's this one's got some good scenery in it. This is Ryan, and it looks like Mark and Kevin at the bow. And it's usually if you're at the bow, you are the one that's going to get the wettest. And so there, Kevin, you can see he's wearing his famous feather, and he's trying to keep it dry. The guides did a magnificent job keeping us safe. It doesn't look life-threatening here, but there are certain parts that are pretty life-threatening.
I suppose you heard that a week after we got off the river, someone was killed on the river, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that was
on a similar trip.
I don't, I read little pieces of it. It was a woman, I understood, and she fell out.
It was one of those, Donna, it was one of those big J rigs, the big long J rigs with 20 people on it. Was one of those. I don't know. I was curious of the details. I mean, I can only imagine maybe it flipped into a wall or something. I don't know.
It was a motorized rig that flipped.
Yeah.
Great big ones.
In the second presentation, you'll see a couple of pictures of what he's talking about, those boats. This boat that we were on, like I said, it was actually very safe because you were fully in control, but it's hard for me to imagine 16 people sitting on a boat going through these rapids and it being fun. But
especially with the constant drone of a motor. So, part of the enjoyment of the river is listening to the river.
Right. Again, here, look at the guide, what he's wearing, a light shirt. And what are the paying customers wearing? They think they're going scuba diving.
Yeah, but the guide's not getting wet. See, we're taking all the water on. The guide's not getting wet. So.
Yeah, it's here's Mark going, yeah, we had a good time. It's hard to get the smiles off your face after a couple of days of this, 18 days later, it's like, okay, we're not having a good time, really. Okay, what part of that? Jim's going, please take another picture off the back.
Hello? Hello? Hi.
Anyway, pretty amazing views also. There's 2 more of these if you want to hang around real quick.
This one here is especially for Barry, because Barry's in the front, as already explained, and you get to get a pretty good view, and I'm in the back and watch what happens to me too, but not as much as Barry.
You see, this is not even one of the rapids that you need to wear helmets on. So.
And the joke was that the two guys up front, it was their job to keep the rest of the three dry.
Right.
Barry did, he failed on this job.
Well, it was a blocking maneuver. Okay, and one more, and then we'll.
Yes. See what you get,
It's there's a it was just daily couple of hours of absolute fun on the water, a couple of hours of hiking up side canyons, a couple of hours of eating, I mean, it's just 18 days of that. It's just it was an amazing trip.
Yeah.
And the people you have to take your hat off to are the guides. They work from sunrise to sunset and work their ass off during the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's basically it for today, guys.
That was great.
Good.
Thanks, that was fantastic.
Barry, you told me when you come back, when I was asking you about the ride, that you said it was very, very dry. So you had to moisturize your skin or something.
Go ahead, Jim, or you guys say something.
We had advice before we even got on the river that one of the parts of your body that you really needed to take care of were your feet, because they were in the water most of the day. We wore a lightweight neoprene sock that was just to keep our feet warm. And when I was ready to go to bed, I had a separate pair of socks that I wore every night, because I had taken a baby wipe, wiped my feet off, and then put on hand lotion on my feet, and then put them into the socks, the same socks every night, so I wasn't getting the sleeping bag all mucked up. And Barry did the same thing, and I think most of the people did. And we didn't have a lot of first off, we didn't have any injuries that I know of that took a little bit more than a Band-Aid. And the other thing that happens with the dryness is your hands get pretty dry. And one of the saviors was, and Sabrina probably knows this one, we had, and I think you'll see some pictures of it later on, morning ritual of putting super glue over the slices or the cuts in your hands.
Yep.
That really worked very well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was dry, and you just tried to keep as moisturized as you could.
Well, they said you don't heal until you leave the canyon. So they put crazy glue. If you split your skin on your toes, your fingers, it's crazy glue that held you together for the last 10 or 15 days.
But did you crazy glue not stick one toe to the other toe?
Nah.
No.
That's amazing.
Oftentimes it was more on the hands than it was on the feet. The feet, at least mine, I didn't have any problem with that protocol of nightly applying of the hand cream to my feet.
So did the crazy glue work on your wife when you came home? To the lips.
No comment.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what kind of camera was being used for most of these pictures?
There were numerous cameras. I don't know how many cameras. Barry has mentioned Casey and Matt had a SRL camera. I had, and all the videos that I think you're going to see, I don't know if there have been any others that people have submitted, but all of mine, I took about 54 videos, and they were all done with a point and shoot underwater camera that was 7 years old.
So what, like a Canon, like a Nike, like what kind of an underwater camera?
It was a Fuji, I believe.
Fuji, okay.
So I mean, what happened was that there was over 5,000 pictures that the group took, right? And
Right.
so you started going through them. Jim took a lot of videos. Most people took individual pictures, and it was going through the individual pictures. And the
Well,
first,
some of the pictures came out really, really nice, I think, very spectacular, some.
And I think the color ones that are so clear and crisp were taken by Matt on his iPhone. He took a lot of pictures with his iPhone.
Wow.
And I think a number of people took a lot of pictures with their iPhones and downloaded to another site that we've had. And if I'm not mistaken, Donna, when we went through lava, didn't John shoot with his iPhone through the rapids? I thought he had, because when we got off or through lava and everyone's standing on the beach, the first thing that you see on one of the videos is everybody's around John showing the video going through.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, now
Anyway,
yeah.
There were a number of cameras, but a lot of people, I would say, had iPhones that they took, and that's why they weren't doing videos. And one of the gals had a GoPro, and she did a lot of time lapses. I haven't seen any of her pictures. Has anybody else seen any of her pictures?
She's uploaded a couple of things onto the group Google Drive, but not much. And then she sent, I mean, at least me, she sent a couple of, shots of, myself, Matt, Jeff, but she hasn't downloaded a whole lot of stuff. So.
Okay. Well, anyway, Donna, you've got the three of you going through the rapids at the canyon, little Colorado, if you haven't seen that. It's on Berries.
On Berries. Okay.
On Berries, yeah.
Cool.
well, the key with the pictures are they're unbelievable, and everybody's perspective is what I enjoyed, because you're trying to see everything at the same time, take pictures, and so everybody sees different things. So putting them all together was the best thing, to be able to see all the perspectives.
Yeah.
So then the last question about power for all of these devices, then did people all have the portable type batteries? Is that how they were charging them up at night?
As long as you had a good friend named Barry, he took care of you.
Okay.
I ended up buying this large battery bank that is solar powered. And so it has 3 USB ports. And so, that kept us going throughout the time period, because I would love to have taken my good phone along, but I took my camera along, and the first day I killed the camera with water, and so from that point on, I had to rely on Jim. So, it's a tough environment down there, whether it's the sand. I mean, Donna will attest to this. It's unbelievable, that gritty material that gets into everything that you have, whether it's the camera lens or your underwear or your sleeping bag. It doesn't matter where. It's everywhere, every day. That's the little bit of the curse of it.
We had like
How cold did it get at
very
night?
windy days.
Say again?
How cold did it get at night, overnight?
I would say we did not really get any extreme weather. We were all prepared for possible snow. We took a lot of our ski gear with us, and I was prepared with four layers of clothing on the upper body, and I only got to, and I used that one day on the river, but at night I generally had on a long sleeve shirt, fleece, and a couple of nights I put on a down jacket with a hood. And a couple of mornings we woke up, but most of the time we were just in a light jacket, because as you saw, we didn't use wetsuits. And a lot of people think you're wearing wetsuits, but you have long stretches to where you're not getting wet. And you just would get overheated, and you can't take your wetsuit off. So the key on the Colorado anyway was to just have good rain gear. And they stressed in the literature of your packing list to get 100% waterproof rain gear. Don't get a water resistant stuff. And that worked, I think, very well for all of us, just to have the 100% waterproof gear.
What kind of food did you eat at night for dinner?
Oh, great food. One night we had, you'll probably see it, I think, in the next series, the barbecue that they had with 8 tri-tip on it, maybe 6, I don't remember. And then one night,
garlic mashed potatoes, Jim.
Yeah.
With the tri-tip.
We had all of our food was fresh or frozen and then thawed out with the meats and things. But when you finish off the trip, and again, Christy and I did a tour after I got off the river. I was so excited. We went and did a circumnavigation, and we went back up to Orr's warehouse, and they were just finishing up a trip and doing what they call de-rigging, and they were still taking ice out of their coolers. That was I think a 16 or 17-day trip.
We had ahi steaks and salmon and, eggs and blueberry pancakes and French toast and Dutch oven.
Fresh fruit almost every morning till the end.
And many nights they would bake a cake, and that was for dessert.
Yep.
They were Dutch oven. I'll bet they did stuff as Mark's saying, at least 6 nights that we had something come out of the Dutch oven.
Yeah.
Including lasagna, two types of lasagna, biscuits, cornbread.
We even had ice cream.
Wow.
Oh,
well, that's sort of a cheating one. Our last night, the last 20
earlier in the trip too. We had ice cream twice.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
The last night of our trip, which was night 17, we were taken off the last 25 miles of the river on a 40-foot jet boat that you'll see pictures of on part 3. But they came up and they had a cooler full of fresh
salmon
fillets, and another little cooler with dry ice that we all had ice cream the 17th day on the river.
Elspeth, all I can tell you, Elspeth, is you would eat like a queen. You never, there was never a time where you said, that wasn't very good. There was never.
So Elspeth, you're asking a lot of questions. Are you planning on doing one next year?
No. I would get claustrophobia in there.
Claustrophobia?
Oh, yeah.
And I can't. Come on. Now, Elspeth's most important question is, when you really need to go to the toilet, what did you do?
Okay.
You're going to see that the next episode.
Oh, well.
Yeah, they're very.
That's a good teaser, Barry. You gotta tune in next week to figure out how we do that one.
And there is a term for that. It's called the groover, which I'll explain next time.
Okay. That's a good hook. I'm gonna go, you guys. I'm tired and
Me
starving.
too. I gotta go.
Guys,
that was great, guys. Thanks.
Thanks so much. It was really great. See you next time. I'll look forward to that.
Okay, guys.
Thank
you. Richard and Rita, thanks, guys. Very good.
Thank you. It was terrific.
Good job, Bear.
Great job, guys.
Ranger, nice to see you.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys later.
Bye.
On Friday, Barry.
Mark,
Bye-bye.
talk to you soon. Oh my God, there's Don.
Yeah.
I
Hey.
didn't see you come in. You must
Thank you. Great show.
Okay, Ann, you can hang up now.
Or she caught a fish yet? Anyway, that was good, Jim. I appreciate. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent job, Barry.
No, it's a group effort.
Well, we're still recording, so.
Okay, let me
we'll,